The tragedy of 9/11 impacted all of us.
But for those who lost someone they love, the pain is still fresh. Paula Nacke Jacobs of Berlin joins us this afternoon. Paula lost her brother, Louis Joseph Nacke II, or Joey, when 4 al-Qaeda terrorists hijacked United Airlines Flight 93 and the plane crashed near a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I know it's hard.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just start off. Tell us about Joey. Who was Joey?
Joey was the oldest of the 4, and I had the privilege of being the only sister in a house full of boys, and he enjoyed his role as big brother. There were probably a lot of things about him that he wouldn't want me to share, just his tenderness and his generosity towards his family and the love that he had for all of us. He was very strong in character, very passionate about his life. When he met you, he wanted to find something out about you. He took a genuine interest in everybody that came across his life, so that the next time he saw you, he would remember your name and something important about you to make you feel like he knew you. And he wanted you not to forget him. He had a brightness and a twinkle in his eye. He instantly made you feel comfortable. As children, we were taught to always look out for each other, because at the end of the day, our parents reminded us that that's what we had. We're always were each other. He took that role very seriously. He loved deeply, completely. I think the thing that he'd most want to be remembered for was being a good father to his children, a good son to my parents, and a good citizen.
And that's your parents right there?
That's actually the church where he was baptized in, and it was one of our cousin's weddings. Mm-hmm. And he had such a sentimental heart that he wanted to make sure that we took his picture in front of the cathedral so that he would have it with my parents to remember that day. He was loving and gentle. And he would also, if he needed to talk to you about something that he felt like you weren't in line with, he'd quietly take you aside and he'd remind you of the type of person that you're supposed to be. He had no trouble doing that. And then he'd come and see you 5 minutes later, and it was like the conversation never existed. He'd whisper something in your ear. He would, a lot of times, that I shared this with you, that he lived on all of our couches for brief moments in his life. Always the first one up in the morning, whether it was to get one of our kids up or to see if we were up. And he'd jump on our bed and he'd wrestle with us. And then when nobody was looking, he'd whisper in your ear and he would tell you how much he loved you. And those were the really special times. Or the day that I got married. I think if he could have walked me down the aisle with my dad, he would have, because it was so important to him to keep our family close. And he would bake with me. We read books together. I would probably speak to him 2 or 3 times a week on an average, just for whatever it is that was going on in his life, or he had a free minute, or what was going on in the lives of my family or in my brothers. He talked to my mom and dad every day.
Paula, take us back 11 years to that day. You had said it started off just like a normal day.
It started off exactly like your day had started. I got up with our kids. I had packed their lunches for the day. It was the first week of school, and we were driving there, and my husband had called and said, "Are you watching what's going on TV?" And you know, when there's kids in the morning, you don't have time to turn on the TV, or you're getting everybody ready. And so I was driving in the car with them, and they were curious, and they asked me what was going on, and I had said to them that we need to take a moment, we need to say a prayer, because many lives that day were going to be changed forever. And at that moment, I had no idea that it was going to be ours. And I went to work with my husband, and my father came in. We were all looking at the TV, and I said to my dad, and I said, I don't even know how to breathe. I said, these families' lives are forever changed because you're seeing the tower. And I remember doing a little check where everybody is. My oldest brother, Joey, was on the flight, which we did not know. My brother Kenny is a Baltimore County police officer, and my youngest brother Dale was in Georgia. So in my mind, I had done a little mental note that everybody was safe and that we had dodged a tragedy. And then my dad had left, and then he had called me around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "No." He said, "Sit down." He said, "We believe your brother was on the flight that crashed in Shanksville." And I kind of lost my breath for a minute or two. And he said, "I'm going to get your mother, and I need you to pull yourself together, and I need you to be there for your mom." So Doug and I left. I called a girlfriend to get our kids for us, and I sat outside my parents' front porch waiting for my parents to come. And my parents pulled into the driveway, and my mom was in the car. And at that moment, she was forever changed. The brightness in her eyes and everything had just sort of dimmed in her. And she just said, "He's gone. I know he's gone." And I really couldn't believe it in that moment, because I had honestly felt like, why wouldn't I know? Someone that I had shared a life with and had shared secrets with, and good times and bad times. Why couldn't I sense that he wasn't with us anymore? And so hours went by, because United didn't give confirmation right away. Even though he was on the passenger manifest, it took time. It took several hours. I think we got confirmation. It was around 5:30 in the evening. And my father took the call. And then became the task of notifying the family. My parents were entirely too fragile. You know, my other two brothers were out of town. And, you know, the role that my brother thought that he would play in this life became mine. Mm-hmm. And then the rest kind of followed.
Well, we know that, we now know that several of the passengers fought back, and you believe your brother was one of them.
Knowing our brother the way that we do, Joey would have never let somebody else choose the way that he was going to leave this world. He was a fighter by nature and a protector. We do know, based on his seat assignment and the location of his physical remains, that he was one of the gentlemen that were involved in the storming of the cockpit. My brother Kenny and I had the privilege to listen to the cockpit voice recorder. And it's something that I tend not to share, but maybe this is the day to hear it. We were in a room in a hotel in New Jersey, and everybody had headsets on, and the dialogue had been translated. And then there was a screen where the translation was done. So there wasn't really a moment. You couldn't converse with someone else. And at one moment, you're hearing the beverage cart as it's hitting the cockpit door, and you hear a lot of, you know, men's voices, all in English. And at one moment, my brother and I looked at each other at the same exact time, and I know it was his voice. You know someone's voice when you've heard it your entire life. And the fact that Kenny and I turned and looked at each other at the exact same moment was just verification for us. I didn't need it, because I knew the man that he is, and he would fight for us.
And he was on that flight because of the man he is, to help somebody else.
Absolutely. He was at dinner with his father-in-law and his wife, and he had just celebrated his 42nd birthday. And he had received a phone call that there was a distribution problem in San Francisco. So instead of having his assistant, who did most of the traveling, he had a wife and family at home, and he decided that it being as late as it was, that he would be the one to go, not to disrupt their family. He made his own plane reservations. They were made at 10 o'clock the night before, and he was taking the red eye back. He didn't like to be away from his family.
You've been to the Flight 93 National Monument?
Many times. Before its conception, we all sat at a picnic table and felt that there was something that we needed to do to honor the lives of these very heroic individuals. And we were careful and patient and prudent with the design process. I had the privilege to be a part of the jury. I'm a current board member for the families of Flight 93, And it really is quite lovely. I saw where the trees were charred, and now to see such healing in that land, in the Wall of Names, and you walk this journey down, and the visitor experience is very powerful, and I'm hoping thought-provoking, because at the end of the day, I think all of us, how would we react? What would we do if we were on that plane? Could we rise up? Could we make that same decision? I'd like to believe that we all would.
Mm-hmm. Now there's some effort to, the memorial is not finished yet.
No, we are having some issues.
Yeah, tell us about the
Fundraising.
fundraising efforts that have happened so far that you've been involved with.
I was involved in a lot of the grassroots fundraising in the beginning. I would have to say that my brother Kenny and my cousin Patrick have done the majority of the fundraising events. They've traveled to Texas. They were very involved in the dinner with President Clinton, President Bush, and the fundraiser there. That was quite extraordinary, that the three presidents would get together to try to raise some money to help finish our memorial. And it was a pleasure to meet all of them. And they absolutely have a vested interest in seeing this through. We need several $1 million to complete the museum. Our website is honorflight93.org. People can donate. And my brother Kenny has rode cross country twice. It's Ride with the 40 in order to raise awareness of the event, the courageous acts of heroism on that day, not only on our flight, but on the two separate events as well.
This is a couple of pictures here of the event.
Mm-hmm. It was important for my brother Kenny to complete his brother's journey. So it was my two brothers, my brother Kenny, my brother Dale, and our cousins. And we were raised more as siblings than we were as cousins. And they wanted to finish his ride and the completion of his journey. He couldn't make it, so they did for him. And along the way, they met extraordinary people from city to city. People would just ride along with them for as long as they could, or invite them to their homes for dinner, or donate whatever money that they had in their pocket. It was a great example of the human spirit.
Paula, if there's one thing that you want people to know about Joey, what would it be?
That he lived and he loved well. He was quite extraordinary. I could go on and on and on, and I don't really honestly feel that there would ever be enough adequate words to describe the man, the father, the son. He's really missed and loved beyond measure. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing your story, Paula. I know it's hard, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Well, still 11 years, it's hard to imagine all that has happened. And for some people, it's like the attacks happened just yesterday.
So still ahead on our special 9/11 Delmarva Life, the psychological toll the September 11th attacks took on Americans, how these images affect our emotions, and why for some it's hard to turn away.
And later, many of our children weren't even alive in 2001, so they only know of 9/11 because of the pictures they've seen. So how do we teach without terrifying? One local woman will show us. We'll be right back.